They called it the Blip.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Movie R, or Movie After Action Review, where we review movies from an emergency management perspective. This week, we're looking at the Blip. You guys remember the Blip from Marvel, from Thanos, from the Avengers, and from Spider-Man Far From Home. With the new movie coming out December 16th, Spider-Man No Way Home, thought this would be a good opportunity to go over real and fake of the Blip when people left and when they came back. And what emergency managers would be doing, a PSA at the end, and just kind of running through the scene and the implications and cascading effects of what that would actually cause on our planet.
Okay, so real talk. So basically this is a combination of two movies. We have Marvel, the Infinity War, where at the very end you see Nick Fury. Well, first of all, he dies. Well, I guess that'd be last of all, he dies.
John, I think it's pronounced furry.
Nick
Yeah.
Fury.
Yeah.
The furry man. So we have Nick Fury and the chick. I don't even know. Robin from yeah, How I Met Your
How I
Mother.
Met Your Mother.
We're gonna call her Robin. This is like really messed up. So Robin gets out of the car after they get in this car crash, and she's like,
There's no one here.
and they look up and there's a helicopter. This is very important. They see a helicopter crash into a building. Very important part. And then you fast forward to Far From Home, Spider-Man Far From Home, and you see the band in the high school clip. You see the band pop. They're back, but they're back in the exact same location. So two critical points. Captain of a helicopter, sure, crashes into a building, not only killing himself, herself, everybody on board, and the people in the building. So you have all that problem. And then you come back, but you're back in the exact same location that you were.
I mean, also the car that almost hits Nick Fury, it crashes right in front of him, and there's nobody in it. So 2 or 3 really critical things to remember that most people didn't really talk about or haven't really touched on or mentioned. So
yeah, that's kind of a big deal, by the way. Oh, hey, surprise. Now you have car crashes everywhere. So not only are like people just gone, but how do you get home?
Thanos snaps his fingers. He gets all the Infinity Stones in Infinity War, snaps his fingers. And not all, but half of life in the universe completely disintegrates. So yeah, that's bad on its own. But then you got a whole plane full of people and both pilots just disappeared.
Assuming it's just human life, not like plant life and everything like that. But if it's just human life, if you kill half the population, you kill all the population. I should like cue a clip of somebody like looking at where's it, Sunny in Philadelphia? Let's say this is the scenario, okay? You have 2 kids in school. One kid is in high school. One kid would technically probably be in elementary school or maybe middle school. And the schools are on the same road, right? You have, middle school and high school right next to each other. And you're driving down the road at 7:20 in the morning, your local time, and the blip happens and your high schooler disappears, okay? Now you're freaking out. You probably have a car crash. You probably have lots of car crashes. Everybody's dying that way, i.e. helicopter. But let's say you survive. And now your youngest is now 5 years. They're a senior in high school. But now it's 7:20 in the morning. But because of traffic or for whatever reason, you're like, I don't know, 30 feet behind where you were 5 years ago. And the blip happens back. But if you go back to the same spot, oh, just kidding. You just ran over your old kid that you saw die 5 years ago, and now you killed your own child.
Yes, and that's happening all over the highway, all over the streets. People are falling out of the sky from where they were in an airplane when they disappeared. People are drowning in the ocean from being in a submarine or just maybe swimming. People who are in semis who are driving on the highway, maybe a route for a manufacturing company. People who are welding at the time or handling
welding, that'd be the worst.
Handling hazardous materials at the time, they come right back to where they were, maybe bump into that person who's also holding hazardous materials now. People who are in a lab who are holding on to chemicals, those are getting, just everything kind of falls apart. It's not just that half of the universe's life disappears. And I don't know if that includes trees and plants too, and animals, but that would have an impact as well.
How about it's 3 years after your spouse disappeared and you get remarried and you're in that same bed, 5 years, boom. Oh, and then two things can't exist in the same spot. So you're laying there with the person that you have now, you now love them, and you're trying to I don't know, you've had this crazy experience where you both went through something insane, and then boom, your spouse comes back and your new lover and your old lover just explode. You have blood everywhere. Now you have this so that's the 5-year thing. But immediately after the thing, it doesn't work either, because if half of life, we'll just keep it to human life, if you have half of, I don't know, disease is gone, that could be thing. But anyways,
well, what's interesting is that in the Avengers Infinity War, or in the second one, Endgame, they are acting as if the whole world has just been destroyed and all hope is lost. However, when you go to Spider-Man Far From Home, they're still in school. They're going to school. There's plenty of teachers. Okay, there's not as much students now. You don't need as many teachers. And the hospital from WandaVision, when that one agent comes back, the hospital's still operating just fine.
Totally
Actually,
fine.
all the lights are on, surprisingly. All the lights are on at the school. So I hadn't really thought about that aspect, but that would be fake, because probably fake because there wouldn't be enough people to run all the energy stations, all the electricity in the country.
It's also real. Dogs are real.
Dogs are real.
Yeah. So yeah, good call out there. Yeah, just clearing the road of all the vehicles that just went down, all the debris, the buildings that went down. I mean, you'd have so much infrastructure impact. What's real is that I don't know. There's not a lot of real. Everybody would die in this situation. I'm
not a lot of real. Maybe the only real is how people are dying. Maybe that would be real if it actually happened. Planes would go down. People would just reappear in the sky. People would reappear in the ocean. People would reappear in boats. People would reappear in the operating room.
Ooh, that would be awkward.
Mm-hmm.
That's an awkward one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, between the reappearing and the worst spots possible. By the way, I love the kid that gets hit in the marching band member gets hit in the face with the basketball. It's awesome. Okay. So a lot of crazy happening. CIA did assessment several years ago that if an EMP hit, EMP electromagnetic pulse hit the U.S., 50 to 90% of the U.S. would be dead in a year because they don't have any of the systems that work. So this is as close as to that as that you could get. Of if you have half your systems gone, if you have half the assets, as in people or resources crashing into different things, everybody dies.
You know what an EMP does? It's electromagnetic pulse that, as if there were an explosion, let's say there's a nuclear explosion in a city, or a massive explosion, it would pretty much act like a shockwave and go through an entire city, knocking out all the power. Anything that uses electricity to power itself you'd be unable to operate it.
Basically, it'd be Ocean's 11. Cue Ocean's 11 when he takes down the casino with a targeted EMP, right? They put the giant magnet under the thing and then they pop and they take out the casino, all the electric systems of the casino. By the way, talk about destroying infrastructure that way, because you don't just repair those wires. You have to replace all of those wires, all those chips. So pretty catastrophic disaster.
I'd say that there are people that live. So we differ in our approaches there.
There's no way that everybody would die. Okay, maybe not immediately, but like I don't know, 5 years. And you have like this, you'd have like a brand new Adam Eve situation happening.
We survived before there was electricity, before there were cars, and before the Industrial Revolution, and we could survive after it as well.
Okay, first of all, you and I would be 100% dead. We would not survive this.
We're talking through a computer right now, so we can't really function without computers.
But like, I don't know, people like, this is where the third world, or what, you know, people consider the third world, would really save human life. And that's actually kind of cool to think about, of people who are not used to those systems are much more resilient to catastrophic disaster because they can recover faster. So one, I guess, real thing is you could have people survive.
A cold shower every morning.
You take a cold shower every morning?
It's ever since Lent 2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, that's a whole other thing. But that's pretty awesome. So you say we don't, but we do. So maybe people are more resilient than we think they are. I think you and I have discovered that too with you know, with people in disasters or responses we've been to. We've seen people who, you know, doesn't really matter their walk of life, people find a way to survive. And quality of life could change, but cue that line of life finds a way.
Life finds a way.
You are also finding that you cannot relate to the things that John and I are talking about, or you don't think this way. It's probably because you're not an emergency manager. We usually get hired to think this way because nobody else wants to. So there are people who are hired to think like this.
Yeah, and we think we gonna go into deep of like how resilient people are, especially once we look at like anthropology of disaster. Award-winning author Dr. Heather Beale creates books that explains and prepares children for emergencies. Movies about disaster are entertaining, living through disasters or not. Teaching children about these events is super important. So whether you need to talk about tornadoes, elephant wind, or earthquakes, tummy rumble quake, or fire drills, burnt toast, and snow cream cones, this amazing book series for small children by Train for Safety Press is worth reading. It's offered in multiple languages, and you can pick up a copy today by clicking on the link below.
Does anyone even have a plan? I have a plan.
Even though all this is going down, the emergency managers that are still there, the people who did not disappear, are, yeah, this is crazy, but they may still be enacting their plan. They still may be trying to run an emergency operations center. They still may be trying to do something, because although emergency management's point, yeah, you can try to go for prevention as much as possible, but the plan is not for prevention. The plan is, here's how we respond to the bad things. It doesn't say that we're going to prevent the bad things from happening. The bad things may be inevitable, and we're going to do what we can to prevent them if we can. But the plan is for how we're going to respond when the bad things do happen. So I think you're still going to have people, you still have the heroes who are still responding, who are still trying to be out there helping people. I mean, in one of the movies, Captain America is in like almost like an AA type support group for people who lost other people during the blip. So there's people out there still doing good for each other. And I think that's a hopeful part of the movie, is that even when there's been so much mayhem and catastrophe, that people still came together and helped each other. So even though most people die, I think those that are left behind are probably desperate, but still there for each other.
I think it's a good call out too, of like, just you know, it does truly come back to community. And if you can take care of community, you're much more resilient working together than trying to do things on your own. That's one thing that's really wrong about movies and people who are hardcore doomsday preppers. They think they can do it all by themselves, and they're actually much weaker for, you know, in that standpoint. And we've seen that over and over again in response of just when communities come together, they repair faster. They get back on their feet faster. So great call out. So, okay. So we talked about what's real, what's fake. We talked about like kind of like what's happening in these systems a little bit. Let's say we're hit by a catastrophic disaster and, you know, your supply chain, let's just do supply chain, whether it's an electromagnetic pulse and it's destroying your electric grid, or I don't know, you're in Texas and it snows and your power goes out because you don't have gas or whatever. So what happens if you're in a catastrophic disaster where you don't have electricity? What would be our way to avoid stupid?
Yeah, so I think one of the best things that people can do is to know their neighbor. To go knock on your neighbor's door, learn your neighbor's name, learn if they have kids, if they have a family, if they're single, what their situation is. And if there could be a disaster, or there has been in the past in your area, get to know your neighbor, because in places like Oklahoma, where they have tornadoes all the time, and other communities, those neighborhoods are close because they know their neighbors and they help each other out because they have disasters so often and they want to help each other out. So community helping community is really important, and can be useful during any disaster.
Yeah, especially like, let's say you have a generator and some gas and they don't, you can drive by them and say, on your left. Is that a bad?
I don't know.
Whether
I think that's the opposite point of what I was trying to make.
I'll see if I can put a car in the video with Captain America. On the left. Come on, but all my stuff. You don't. No, but seriously, like, talk about what's happening and mental. What I call mental first aid is like when you're in a catastrophic situation and you're going through a lot of stuff. It is so much easier to rebound when you're working with a community. Emergency managers, one of the best things that we have at our disposal is that we understand that's we call the whole community approach. We talk with each person who's in charge of their function, as mentioned earlier, and we bring all of our competencies to the table and say, hey, what are you good at? So your neighbor might have a surplus of stored water. You might have a surplus of, I don't know, beef jerky or canned food, and your other neighbor might have a portable stove. And so your life becomes better when you can work with the community, get out of your shell a little bit, ironically, and go mingle. What is that? Singles mingle? Don't be single, but you can't.
Go meet your neighbor. It doesn't cost you anything.
Mingle with your neighbor in a very appropriate way. And that would be our call out. Anything to add?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think
Good. Yeah, I think that's a good one. And so if you have any additional ideas, that if you're in a power outage for 4 or 5 days or maybe even longer, what are some of your ideas to deal with this disaster? We would love to hear your comments or read your comments below, and take that whole community approach as well. And we'll see you for the next movie. Movie R.